What is going on, guys? It is Dylan with DFS bringing you another video. Today's video, I am going over some prop bets and, of course, your Thursday night showdown on DraftKings and FanDuel. So it's a very interesting game looking at it. It's one of the more confusing ones. We have a low over-under, and we have two teams. Cincinnati's favored by 7.5. Jacksonville getting some special teams defensive touchdowns. Having close games. I don't know. It's definitely. I think it'll be a lot better than people are putting it out just because of 7.5. But we'll get into it. We'll talk about who I like, talk about who I don't, and talk about what very little values there are. So, on DraftKings, Joe Burrow is the most expensive player. Joe Mixon, Trevor Lawrence, and Jamar Chase are all above 10K. So it's going to be interesting, especially when those are pretty much your highest projection players. If you look on almost any projections, those are between Burrow, Mixon, Lawrence. Those are your three. How I look at it, just by looking at all the data out there, Joe Burrow, I'm probably going to go away from instead of Trevor Lawrence. And the reason being is Joe Mixon has a very good game script today. Looks very favorable for him. And it's pretty hard to get Burrow and Mixon in there and still have a very decent line. You're going to have to find some value there. And there's very little value unless you're playing a defense. If you're on FanDuel, we'll look at FanDuel as soon as we get done with DraftKings. But the defenses are in play. I'm not favorable on them, but it seems like defenses are usually playing games like this. So Mixon is $600 cheaper, and in all honesty, I'm probably going to play Mixon over Burrow and leave Burrow out. Now, I know it sounds weird and all that, but on a low game total in a very good game script for rushing more than it is passing, I like Mixon. Now, I don't think Burrow's in a bad spot at all. That's not entirely what I mean. I mean, if they're a 7-point favorite, and I mean, a lot of people are saying there's supposed to be more, and I understand that. But a team that's ahead probably isn't going to throw that much in the second half. So if you're watching the first half and you're like, man, Cincinnati's up by 10, 14, something like that, they're probably going to run the ball quite a bit. They're going to throw when they have to, but for the majority of it, they're going to run. And Joe Mixon is that guy. They do have some other guys behind him, but I don't really trust him. We'll talk about him here shortly. Trevor Lawrence, the reason I like Trevor Lawrence over Joe Burrow is being the underdog. Underdogs have to throw the ball more. Jacksonville established a run pretty well against Arizona last week, and it's interesting what they're going to do against Cincinnati. Cincinnati's rush defense has actually been pretty good, but the thing to look out for is Cincinnati's going to be out a safety and a defensive back, which opens up some options for me to like. But yeah, Trevor Lawrence at 10-4. I'm probably going to play Lawrence over Burrow. I could just see Lawrence passing for more than Burrow does, as well as getting the passing touchdown. So, like I said, a team playing behind is a quarterback that you want to get because they're going to pass a lot. With that being said, Jamar Chase is the most expensive receiver. He is $1,600 more than Marvin Jones Jr. Now, we can look at Jamar Chase, and it's very interesting to see his fantasy points. You see week 1, that overtime game with Minnesota. He did have a 50-yard reception, which stands out. So if you take that 50-yard reception away, he's 4 for 6, 51 yards. It's not a terrible stat line and that touchdown. But it's not a terrible stat line, but it's not these numbers. Now, Burrow and Chase have had a good connection. It's just if you look at who Jamar Chase is going against, it's not a favorable matchup tonight. Especially for being 10-2, he really has to pay off. If you're going to play the Mixon and one of the quarterbacks, he has to pay off because that is more than half of your salary on those 3 players alone with not a lot of huge value plays tonight. So Jamar Chase, I'm probably going to stay away from. James Robinson, I'm a huge James Robinson fan. I love his story, but at 9,400, I don't love them against the Cincinnati rush defense. We said they're top 5 rush defense right now in the league. Cincinnati's played. I mean, you look at who they played. They played Dalvin Cook, played good against them. Played the Bears. Against Montgomery, they were good. Against Fields and Dalton, not as good. And then last week, they stopped Najee Harris, even though Najee Harris was technically a receiver. But it's not a favorable matchup for James Robinson. And you also have to play in the fact that you go down here and Carlos Hyde is 1.8. And I don't know. He's 1.8. He gets quite a bit of attempts every game. He steals some red zone looks too. James Robinson's still going to get his, but Carlos Hyde gets in there quite a bit, or a lot more than we'd like. And they don't get a lot of red zone opportunities, so that does worry me. But Marvin Jones Jr., with the 2 injuries to defensive backs, Marvin Jones Jr. stands out quite a bit to me, especially only being 8,600. I'd expect him around the high 9,000, low 10,000, and it's simply because he is, there we go. He is Trevor Lawrence's favorite receiver so far, and you look, he didn't get a touchdown last week. He's gotten a touchdown. He's kind of like a Jamar Chase if you look at their stats. Jamar Chase is probably going to be their number 1 targeted receiver in the red zone. I do like Tyler Boyd, but Jamar Chase, Marvin Jones are your 2 wide receiver red zone targets. Now, Marvin Jones, good matchup, 8,600. I like him. Shenault probably has the worst matchup of the 3 for Jacksonville. So Marvin Jones is my favorite Jacksonville receiver tonight. T. Higgins is out, unfortunately. And Tyler Boyd, if you're not playing Jamar Chase, I highly recommend playing Tyler Boyd. He's got a very good matchup tonight against Jacksonville. Like I said, Jamar Chase has probably got the rougher matchup of the 3. Tyler Boyd has probably got the most favorable matchup. So we saw what happened last week with T. Higgins out. It's kind of, there's not a huge difference in stuff. 4 receptions, 6 targets, touchdown. So you also see his price drop in those main slate prices as well. Or for the Showdown, I apologize. But yeah, DJ Chark, 7,200, another wide receiver that I like tonight with the injuries with Cincinnati. I think that causes some problems. Now, they're going to plan for it, but you have to consider that Cincinnati's only had 3 days of practice, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and they have the game Thursday. So you're giving those 2 guys essentially 3 days to get those first team reps and be ready for this Jacksonville offense. Who needs a win. They honestly do. Otherwise, his team's not looking promising starting the season 0-4. You start basically the first quarter of your season without a win, and that's very dangerous going down the line, especially with an extra game this season. We go down, the Bengals defense is 5.6K. Now, if you totally hate Jacksonville in this game, then go Cincinnati's defense, but I don't feel confident of paying 5.6 for a defense. Granted, they get you those points to start off, 12, 6, 5, and that's probably paying off more than some of these guys down here. But if you look, and like I said, a lot of these guys are high on here. So let's just put Mixon in, and we're not going to put a captain in. We're just going to do plain old the flex. So I'll put Lawrence, I'll put Marvin Jones, MJJ, and Tyler Boyd. You're left with 6,300 for your captain and your other flex. Now, let's say we put someone like DJ Chark. We only have $1,800 to play with. That's it. So you have to find value there. We go down. Dan Arnold recently traded. Now, here's the situation with tight ends this week. You look at the amount of tight ends on Jacksonville, and it's a little worrisome. So recently acquired Dan Arnold is 4,400. Cincinnati has played decent against tight ends. Granted, they haven't seen the best tight ends, so it's hard to say. But at 4.4K, yet again, on 3 days of practice, it's very challenging. Ozuma, you go back to last year, and there's not a lot of tight end love here with that offense. So it's really hard to play one of these guys, especially at the price. Like if they were $2,000 or less, probably then I'll I'll get some type of them, but it's very hard at that 4 and 4 K price range. Josh Lambo's out. Evan McPherson is 3.8K, and he's probably the kicker that I want to go to. Cincinnati should be able to move the ball. Their red zone offense isn't the greatest, but at 3.8K, I do like him tonight, so he's probably the kicker to consider. I don't even think DraftKings has listed Jacksonville's other kicker. I don't see him. So that's also interesting. Jaguars defense at 3,000. Now a lot of people might play him tonight because you look at what they've done the last 2 weeks. Oh my God, 8 fantasy points, 9 fantasy points, and they lost. It's pretty good. They have 2 defensive pick 6 and a kick return for a touchdown. So you're asking for a lot from a Cincinnati's team. Joe Burrow had 4 picks, but guess what? 3 of them came in Chicago, and 3 of them came from 3 straight passes. So it's pretty hard to say that Joe Burrow is a turnover machine because he's not. Mixon runs the ball pretty well, doesn't fumble a lot, so it's hard to ask for those turnovers. Jacksonville actually does have a good pressure rate against quarterbacks, so they might get you a couple sacks, but you're asking for a lot for a team that's 7.5 point underdogs tonight in a very low scoring game. That low scoring says yes, but at 7.5, it's not that favorable. Manhurts is not in any consideration for me tonight. He got the 1 touchdown earlier in the season, but still nothing. Carlos Hyde is probably the one of 2 players that I'm considering playing at the cheap rate. 1.8K, like I said, you can click him now and he won't be blurred. You look at his attempts, 9, 2, and 8. Game against Denver where it's low scoring. Team passed a lot that game. We can go look at it, but the 2 games where it was closer for the most part. That Houston game, James Robinson didn't get any carries in the first half. It was all Carlos Hyde. Gets to 7.8, gets to 4.4. He's in play. At 1.8, he's a value play. Chris Evans is also interesting for me. Evans and Pirine, 1.6 and 800. If Cincinnati is winning, there's a chance, even, knock on wood, but Mixon gets hurt. One of these guys comes into play. We saw it last Thursday with McCaffrey went out, and Chuba Hubbard actually won somebody first place. So those guys should be, you don't have to have them much, but if you're doing 150 lines, you might want a couple lines with them in there. Not favorite plays, not anything like that, but yeah. Jamal Agnew, if you like them defensive touchdowns, they're your guys to go to. But Jamal Agnew is not anything on me. It's situation with the Jacksonville tight ends. Jacob Hollister, when Shaughnessy's down, 6 targets, 2 receptions, 15 yards. So it's interesting, but $1,000 with all the tight ends they have now, it's very shaky. The last 2 guys I'm going to talk about on this slate is Mike Thomas and Auden Tate. Now, these are 2 guys that you should have some type of volume in. They're not great plays by any means, but at $600 and $400, it opens up a lot. So if we were to do this, now Auden Tate saw more snaps last week than Mike Thomas. 1 reception, 14 yards. He won't have a great matchup tonight. It's not a terrible matchup, but it's not a great matchup, and we haven't seen much. And Tyler Boyd and Jamar Chase are there. So let's just say for $600 on a slate like this so we can afford everybody, let's put Auden Tate in the captain. That allows us all that money. We like Mixon. We like Lawrence. We like MJJ. And we like Tyler Boyd. We could play Burrow in this line. We could play Jamar Chase in this line. We can have all that covered. You're fading James Robinson in a bad matchup. You're fading Chenault in a bad matchup. You're losing out on Jamar Chase. You're losing out on DJ Chark. But let's say you don't like Tyler Boyd. Let's say you like Jamar Chase. Boom, you could put him in and you still have money left over. Now, like I said, it's not the greatest play, and I get that. But it opens up for you to get all these guys that are probably going to secure the most points tonight. So it's very interesting. We go on FanDuel, and the prices are pretty much the same. The only difference is Chenault is a lot cheaper. Carlos Hyde is more expensive. And you still see Auden, Tate, Mike Thomas. Mike Thomas is $500 cheaper, but the prices are pretty similar. So they do have the kicker on FanDuel right now. DraftKings will probably have to add that shortly. But yeah, that's not a huge difference. All the players are pretty much in the same field. So yeah, that's it for tonight, guys. Some prop bets I do like Trevor Lawrence over passing yards. I believe it was at 243 last night when I got in it. Tyler Boyd over 65.5 receiving yards. I also did DJ Chark's receiving yards. I think it was at like 43, if I'm not mistaken. And then I do like Joe Mixon over 82.5 rushing yards for tonight. So those are my plays for DFS and for betting. So I hope you guys did enjoy the video. The link for our Discord will be in the description down below. So if you guys are interested in joining, we do have very few free content, but our content that we do put out for subscribers is a lot. We're always there, active on it. You can drop in and ask questions anytime. So like I said, I hope you guys do enjoy this video, and I'm happy there's Thursday Night Football on. Enjoy.